So apparently, as I mentioned before, the Trump campaign has been hacked. A number of news outlets received a dossier of sorts on J.D. Vance that was apparently internal to the campaign when they were vetting him, looking at what his strengths and weaknesses were. There's some question the campaign is asserting that this was Iran. Ken Klippenstein, independent journalist and author of the Ken Klippenstein Substack that you guys should all subscribe to, is here to take a look at all of these claims and counterclaims. Great to see you, Ken.
Good to see you, dude.
Hey, guys. Good to be back.
All right, so break down for us, what exactly do we know about what happened here?
Really, all we know is what Microsoft has alleged. And of course, they have their own internal information. And in a report posted to their website on Friday, they described a hacking attempt into a presidential campaign, but they didn't say which one. And so the author of that post, which I find is interesting, nobody really went into his background, Clint Watts, he's a former FBI special agent. I knew who he was because I've reported on him before.
Yeah,
He's a commentator he was a commentator on MSNBC. He's been a long time commentator and expert on foreign influence efforts. And in 2017, after the 2016 Russian-led interference efforts into the election, then he described, sometimes in hyperbolic terms, those efforts, calling at one point the Russian efforts in the past several years the most effective in history, which I thought was a little bit overstating it. Mm-hmm. And I looked into that question, and Rand put out an interesting report suggesting that they were not actually particularly well organized. They were not particularly effective. So I don't want to denigrate him, but he's somebody who is an expert on foreign influence, and that's what he tends to see. And so in the context of that Microsoft report that he authored, that's definitely concerns worth looking at. But what was astonishing to me is neither the FBI nor the Director of National Intelligence has put out a statement on any of this. So really all we have to go on is that vague report by Microsoft, which again has declined to identify who it was. Yeah. There was a report in the Washington Post, sourced to an anonymous source of Ellen Nakashima's, that said that it was a reference to the Trump campaign, but we don't know if that's the same thing as the leaked information.
One second, Ken. Can we take a step back, though, and just maybe explain to people what happened? Is that this leaked dossier has come to reporters. People are claiming it is Iran. Now, why is it unusual, like you just said, for the DNI, the FBI, and others to have not offered comment with such a public story?
Yeah, so in a situation like this, going back months now, the DNI said, we are going to prioritize declassifying and releasing information proactively to head off foreign interference efforts. And for them to, several days into this, not even say, we're looking at it, we're going to have something for you, just no comment at all from the DNI. We have no comment from the FBI. Either they're not doing very good at what they said that they were going to do, which was to, release information to the public as quickly as they can, or they don't have anything. And that essentially is the question. And I was just about to say a moment ago, the New York Times yesterday, David Sanger, one of the national security correspondents, said that it's not clear if this was from a hack or a leak internal to the campaign. And I think that's a responsible way to frame this. Now, there's plenty of reason to think that it was the Iranians. I mean, to think that they had motive, rather, because, Trump, very hawkish on Iran, theatrically so at times, posting a Game of Thrones at one point, spoof of him saying sanctions are coming. And of course, the assassination of Qasem Soleimani, the reimposition of sanctions, the withdrawal from the Iran deal. So all that to say, they have the motive, but we don't yet know that they were actually the ones that carried it out. And the press reporting has been extremely irresponsible in this regard. I mean, we're coming into what could be this week, an Iranian military retaliation for the assassination in Iran by Israel of the political leader of Hamas, and they're just running with this thing without any underlying proof or even evidence beyond just Microsoft's vague statement, which again did not provide any specifics to know that this was even the same event.
The ironies here obviously are very rich when you consider the 2016 Russian hacking and release of information from internal to the Clinton campaign, and Trump, going out and encouraging that, Russia, if you're listening, et cetera, et cetera. Now the shoe is very much on the other foot, assuming it is Iran, which, as you say, it's not entirely clear that it is at this point. So a Trump campaign spokesman, Stephen Chung, said any media or news outlet reprinting documents or internal communications are doing the bidding of America's enemies and doing exactly what they want. I mean, that sounds almost identical to the language that the Clinton campaign and their supporters used back in 2016 to try unsuccessfully to get the media not to report on the contents of those leaks.
Yeah, the irony here seems to be appreciated by everyone except the Trump campaign. I mean, there's just no awareness at all of it. And I want to point out one interesting thing about that spokesperson. It's been reported that he was asked, have you been in touch with Microsoft? And he declined to say repeatedly to multiple outlets. So there's a lack of evidence here. And in fact, if you look at some of the subsequent reporting, they describe the campaign having been aware of a breach several weeks ago, but that internally in their discussions, they didn't know who it was. So I think there's a very good chance that they just don't know and that this is speculation. Now, none of that is to say that at some point in the future, we might find out that we wouldn't find out that it was Iran. But what seems very clear is that they just don't know. And I haven't seen any contravening evidence to suggest that their own understanding of it has changed in the last several days.
Yeah, I mean, I was just reading as well, like you said, even others media outlets are saying some have accused Iran, but nobody is definitively saying. The White House has not yet released a statement, which it seems likely that it would, given previous positioning, Ken. I mean, there's been some speculation that, oh, well, if it was, they wouldn't want to acknowledge it. But that doesn't seem true to me, given how outraged they were over Russian hacks and how big a deal they have made about election threats and hacking and all of that. What's your read on the situation?
I mean, this is a huge budget priority, and I've reported on on the emergence of all of these counter disinformation, counter foreign influence offices throughout the federal government, in the Department of Defense, in the Department of Homeland Security, within the DOJ. They have thrown so much money at this. And for us to be several days into this, and for them not even to say, we're looking at it, we're working on something, we're gonna have something, is outrageous. What are we paying these people for? They won't even come out and say, we're looking. The FBI did acknowledge that they've seen the media reporting, so they know about this. It's on their radar. But they won't give us anything. And I understand in the cyber world, they have a saying, attribution is difficult. It's hard to know who did what. I mean, you might see that there was a breach, but it could be a party trying to look like another party. It could be, an independent actor. These questions are not simple technical questions. So I understand that it might take time, but they have not provided any indication that they're working on it or that an answer is forthcoming, which leads me to wonder if there is one, or if the agencies are just doing a poor job of communicating. And again, time that's really important geopolitically for them to be clear about what's happening with regard to Iran. I mean, the military is repositioning itself to prepare to protect Israel and respond to an attack. I mean, this couldn't come at a worse time geopolitically in terms of the conflict.
One of the things that's been curious to me is, while we know that the hack occurred, and we even know, reportedly among the hacked materials was a document that the Trump campaign has confirmed was authentic, that was effectively the vetting document of J.D. Vance that explored his strengths, weaknesses, et cetera, as Donald Trump was considering adding him to the ticket. Yet none of these outlets that receive these materials have actually reported on the contents of the materials. Now, they did, and in my opinion, appropriately so, when it was, 2016 and with regards to Hillary Clinton, because you're a journalist, you get information from all kinds of sketchy sources. If it's newsworthy, it's newsworthy. It doesn't matter if it was, hacked document or not. If it's newsworthy, you report on it. So what do you make of the fact that none of these outlets, at least last I checked, have actually reported out anything on the contents of what they received?
Yeah, I've seen all these reporters falling all over themselves to say, I hope we learn the lessons of 2016, with all these kind of very, self-aggrandizing accounts of how much we've learned. And the fact that nobody's reporting on it, that was not the lesson to learn. The lesson to learn was report on those things, I agree with you, with the context of where it's coming from, if you don't know where it's coming from, if it's coming from the Russians or whatever, so that the public can make its own determination. Well, I think what we have is a very kind of patronizing attitude on the part of the press that, the public, they're not mature enough to be able to handle this. Yes, they can. Just give them the explanation that there is, a possibility, maybe it's plausible, maybe it's even probable that the Iranians were behind it, and let them come to their own conclusions. And I think what this shows us more than anything is that this attempt to try to, collapse, Trump is the favored, candidate of the foreign, or maybe, but the truth is all sorts of parties are angling to try to get what they want out of any election. And in the end, I think it might be kind of a wash, and that this should encourage us to stop just treating everything as, oh, who's the foreign preferred candidate? Because the truth is, there's good reason to believe the Iranian, and in fact, the DNI has given indication that the Iranians would prefer Biden to be president. On the other hand, there's good evidence that the Russians prefer Trump to be president. So maybe this neurosis about worrying about every single, which foreign party approves of what. I mean, everyone is pushing for their interests in every direction. Right. And so I hope that this is a reminder to people of that.
I couldn't agree more. Iran, if you're listening, I will publish anything that as long as it's true, I don't care where it comes from.
Yeah, true and newsworthy, then, let's have it. Let's know what's in it, know? And I know they've, I think the Trump campaign has said what's in the J.D. Vance vetting document is by and large public information. It probably is. But it's still newsworthy to know what they were assessing, what they were concerned about, how they thought about they could shore up his weaknesses, how they were evaluating him, versus other candidates, et cetera. Obviously, that's news. That would be newsworthy if it came out about Tim Walz from the Harris campaign, certainly. So obviously, it has a news value. And I'm actually kind of surprised, given the precedent that was set back in 2016, that no one has said a word about it. And we know they've had these documents for a number of weeks. So the time is not really an excuse at this point.
Absolutely. All right, Ken, thank you so much for joining, man. We appreciate you.
Great to see you, Ken.
Thanks, guys.
Hey, if you like that video, hit the like button or leave a comment below. It really helps get the show to more people.
And if you'd like to get the full show ad-free and in your inbox every morning, you can sign up at breakingpoints.com.
That's right. Get the full show, help support the future of independent media at breakingpoints.com.